as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day.
Became a nightmare. I'm going to do a walkthrough.
Over 1,300 pieces of evidence were collected from the crime scene.
Scratch marks along the wall.
There was no doubt something paranormal was going on.
And for that exact reason, I'll continue my research to drive away the darkness.
All right, welcome back to ASAP Radio. My name is Ben Robison, and today's guest is William Becker. William and I actually met a couple years ago. We're working on about 3 years at this point. It was in 2012 that him and a fellow, researcher himself, Rocky, had formed the Oregon Ghost Conference, and it's been a huge success, and I got to be a part of that the very first year. And at any rate, William and I have been working together off and on since then and have blossomed a great friendship. And at the same time, I've learned a lot from William. So I just wanted to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored and very much pleased to be here.
Great. So the one thing I always start the show with is talking about, kind of where your experiences first took place and when you became, cognitive of the fact that there are these supernatural forces, energies, and such around us. So why don't you give us a little bit of, background on your genesis, per se, of, paranormal?
Okay. The first full-bodied entity I remember was when I was 8 years old. And a group of us kids were off running around and playing in an area of town that I didn't get a chance to go to very much. And I kept seeing a little boy that looked a little odd. He had red hair. He was dressed a little funny, peeking out from a couple of areas where we were hanging out in Oregon City. And I asked the friend whose house we were coming from who it was and if this kid could join us and play with us. And my friend said, "No, he's dead. That's Carl Green. He died of typhoid."
Whoa.
And so we just thought, oh, okay, and we kept on doing our thing. It was a very famous ghost who's been seen for decades, and he's actually one of the stories we talk about on the ghost tours. Okay. And I brought my own personal experience to that after, we had the original story of who it may or may not be.
Right.
And somebody on one of my tours actually did see him, too, so that made me feel good.
Well, you had a little bit of validation there.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if he'd let me see it. And then I did I guess I've always believed then after that, or wanted to, and that was a story that actually had fallen away for a long time. I'd forgotten about. In college, I did a lot of work working on psychic buildup and such, and I developing my own abilities, and after that as well, and then for a variety of reasons took some time off, and then starting with the ghost tours, I was getting more exposed and seeing a lot of things.
Right.
And then I also met people through that I started doing investigations with and becoming friends with, and noticed along the path, oh, wait a minute, yeah, we're 200 miles away and I know what that backyard looks like.
Right.
And then we get there and, yeah, I'm right, things like that. So
yeah, no, that's amazing. You obviously took courses, in college. Mm-hmm. Was there, what drove you to actually, take a college course to be able to help develop this?
Oh, I didn't take a course in college for this. I was working with other people independently.
Okay, so I misunderstood. Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry.
No,
I'm
that's
glad
fine.
you asked that. No, in the late 70s at an ag college, science-based school, I don't think they would have taken to
yeah, they were probably not a little open to that idea.
Yeah, I took courses in buildings that were reported to be haunted, but
sure,
they weren't working with that. Mm-hmm.
Now, had you done any kind of I know I know paranormal research is far different nowadays than it was 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
So did you do anything that would fall, though, in that realm of paranormal research back then?
I think it was mostly what we'd call psychic research and what was known at the time to a degree of parapsychology. I had teachers in junior high, even English teachers, tell me this would be a field that would be a good one for me to do technical writing and such. And from some of the research I did at the time, just on how we could control our brain waves to heal, and some of the research that was being done in those days about the power of the human brain and just what all we can do that we didn't know we could do.
Sure.
We use such a tiny fraction of our brain, and it makes sense. And this was a time when people were getting more interested in telekinesis. It's not something I've been able to do yet, try as I might.
In due time.
Yeah, I hope. Try to use it for good, but every once in a while, you're at a meeting where you'd really like to have somebody float in the air and go upside down and shake all the truth out of their pockets.
Right. I think we all would.
Yeah, but try not to use it for that. And I did a lot of research, a lot of reading on things like that, but it was... And then throughout college, and then I had friends that we had a meditation circle, and we met at this woman's house in an old house and close to a big park, and we'd fill the house with entities, we'd fill the garden with entities. I mean, it was packed.
Wow.
And she had studied with Native American traditions, I think with Chief Joseph's grandson or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Is what she said. And so that was kind of an opening with somebody who was a little bit more of a formal leader in a sense.
Right.
And it would be fits and spurts.
And that helped you out, furthering, blossoming your just understanding and abilities as well?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, anything significant ever come out of like those meditation circles themselves? Anything prolific, or was it just always the spirits were there kind of almost like gathering with you and participating? They
were gathering with us and participating in a sense of, it seems like helping with wisdom and understanding.
Okay.
It was a long time ago. Did have some confirmations about people that had stolen things from me, from those groups.
Oh, wow.
Which I wasn't combative enough to follow through with.
Sure.
But that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
And so there was some of that would happen. It was a very different type of thing, though, than I'm doing now.
Sure.
I took many years off altogether because I didn't have enough direction, and some of the people that I knew just from where I was working, different things, didn't have really a healthy energy about them. Fun, nice people.
Right.
But
it was toxic.
It was toxic, exactly. And I was getting all kinds of things floating around my apartment. And I thought, okay, I'm done with this for a while.
Yeah.
And then it really started back when I started the tours. And then meeting and getting involved in paranormal investigation more in the way we think about it. And before my first trip to Wellington, I knew I was really psychic, and I was already pretty much the team psychic. But that first trip did it.
Well, for the listeners, per se, can you give us a little bit of background on Wellington itself?
Right. Now, Karen Fraser literally wrote the book. She's got 2 outstanding books out, one on the train disaster, the history, and that kind of thing, and then one on her own journey that's resulted from that. And Wellington was a railroad town in the Cascades, close to Stevens Pass.
Okay.
And I can't remember the date, 1911, 12, something like that. It was the site of the worst avalanche train disaster in U.S. history.
Wow.
They're not quite sure who died. There was a passenger train that had come through the mountains and had gotten stuck. They had 3 big snowstorms right after each other. There was a mail train that was stuck on the tracks, and then the superintendent's train had come up and had gotten stuck there as well. All of a sudden, the rain started, and at 2 or so in the morning, after they'd discovered a way to get down the mountain after being stuck in this little town area for 10 days, the snow let loose. There'd been a big forest fire a year or so before, nothing to hold it in, and anywhere from 90 to 100.
I pulled it up while you were talking about it. This article is talking about 96 people killed on March 1st, 1910. So.
Right, and part of what that doesn't talk about, though, is there was a lot of immigrant labor, particularly Italian, that wasn't in the books.
Right.
And there are lots of people we just don't know about. What the number I got being there was 126. Wow. But I'm not going to say that's accurate.
That was what your psychic reading was giving you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I was able to go around and talk about the activities. Where the town itself is now just a parking lot. There aren't even foundations left. Nothing to give you an indication. And I was talking about what happened and what the locations. And it fit with the history of the town and what those buildings were.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to see the entities that other people had been seeing then. And down in the debris field where the train cars landed, I was getting the names and occupations. And I wasn't allowed to read Karen's book. In fact, it was on that first trip I met Karen. Okay. My team met up with her team. And when we were done, because these people were it was really fun to watch. It was very confirming because their eyes were kind of lighting up. Yeah. And when we went back, they showed me the book, and I was getting the names and occupations right, or the names and ages of kids and different things. And I thought, okay, yeah, this is real confirmation. This isn't coincidence that sometimes this works.
Right.
Yeah, I can do this. And so that was the real turning point.
And in the photo I was just looking at, too, on this website, it shows this train tunnel. Mm-hmm. And I know I for the life of me, I cannot remember somebody else. It might have been even Michael White I read about or saw photos of their excursion to Wellington. Did you guys go into that as well?
Not into the tunnel. It's blocked. You're not supposed to go into it.
Okay.
It's one of those areas that just a little bit of water from the east side can create a real flash flood.
Oh, wow.
You can drown very easily. And there's been cave-in and such in there, too, so it's just not safe.
Okay.
And I try to obey the signs. Anytime you're out there, don't trespass. Follow the signs.
Absolutely.
Follow the laws.
Yeah.
And I'm real careful about that.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's a big thing for me too.
Yeah.
That I want people to be respectful,
mm-hmm.
not only of the laws but just respectful of other people and their lives at stake, because
mm-hmm.
there are groups out there that could potentially lead another group, their team in there, and the team's following them and put them in harm's way. So
yeah, and I didn't know the location or what the geography really was, but I did read that tunnel before, and like a woman with a lantern trying to flag a train down coming out of it. And the tunnel was there, so that was...
Yeah, that's amazing. Something. Well, you've amazed me over, almost 3 years that I've known you, how well your abilities are, so... and this sounds like, yeah, you bet. This sounds like this was a very defining moment for you to give you that I would say probably that confidence that you had the ability to accurately, read and sense these things as well. So
it really was. I knew I could do a lot of this before, but this was when it hit that this isn't a sometimes fluke.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound egotistical or anything, but yeah, I'm pretty good. And nobody's perfect.
Right.
I make mistakes. Anybody that tells you they get it right all the time, run the other way.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
And we can't always prove what we're getting either. That's why it means so much at a place like this, where there really is a book that points out all of these things. And I can have documented evidence to say, yeah, I got it.
Sounds like a new book I need to get.
Yeah. Avalanche of Spirits, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Karen Fraser.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
It's on sale online.
Yeah.
She's a really good writer. So.
Good.
And a good friend.
It's better that she's a good writer, not a bad writer, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So let's talk now. So you rolled into, doing some paranormal investigations of sorts, but you got involved to the Northwest Ghost Tours.
Right.
Is that considered kind of paranormal investigations as well?
Not exactly. What we do on the tours is we talk about the history of the oldest incorporated city west of the Mississippi River and the capital of the Oregon country, which included Washington, Idaho, Oregon, east or western Wyoming and Montana, even northern California.
Wow.
And we talk about the history and the history that keeps repeating itself.
Sure.
And we have a lot of experiences on the tours. On the downtown tour, especially of Oregon City, that I give most of the time, I get a lot of entities that like to follow me around. It's great. They're all friends. But occasionally, like on this Friday the 13th, we're going to do kind of a mini investigation tour where we'll invite people to bring their handheld equipment. We'll have a little bit. And we'll talk about some of the ghost story type things, but after we do, give people a chance to experience a little bit of what an investigation's like. It's not a real full thing. We don't have the IR cameras set up. We're not spending hours out there.
Right.
And far more people than you'd ordinarily have in an investigation.
Sure.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
and it gives them that opportunity.
It gives them that opportunity. And to be honest, often we get a little something, even that way. Even in noisy areas, you can get EVP sometimes.
Oh, yeah. So. It can happen anywhere. That's the thing is a trained ear, if you know what you're looking for, you're gonna hear it. And sometimes, in the rare occasions, even not having a trained ear, when you have that really, big Class A that's screaming out, "I'm here!"
Right.
You don't need to have a trained ear. You're like, holy shit, that was not around us at that time. So,
right.
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad in a sense. I even quit listening to my recordings most of the time because usually the entities say, why the blank should we go to all that effort? Because you can hear us and see us.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but I can't prove it.
You need to do it for the rest of the people here.
Yeah. How can, and they just kind of laugh at me. So.
I could imagine the kind of conversations you do have with the other side. So, so let's talk about how the Oregon Ghost Conference came to fruition.
Okay, it's an idea that Rocky Smith had. He's the owner of Northwest Ghost Tours.
Okay.
He's had it, I think, before I ever met him. And I actually met him taking one of his tours. I'd known about him for a long time. My family had known parts of his family since long before. My dad had his dad as a student,
Oh, wow.
His uncles, his great uncles are my dad's good friends. But I hadn't met him until I'd taken the tour. And one year, finally, I just said, well, let's just do it. Let's set a date and do it. Mm-hmm. So that's how we actually started going ahead and doing it, taking his idea and putting it into fruition.
Yeah.
So, and it's fun.
Yeah.
We get
a lot of work,
people.
though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've seen you. I've seen you during that time. You keep a beaming smile constantly, and you're very attentive to everybody. But
well, thank you. I try to be.
Yeah, but I can also tell that you're pretty wiped at the end of each day because that's a lot of effort, energy that even leads up to it, and then happens during the course of that weekend, and then trying to stop and recharge and go back and do it again, so
yeah, I recharge afterwards.
Right.
It's my philosophy on any of the work I do is I want it to be good for everybody that's there. We try to keep the prices way down for teams attending. It's free for people to attend. We have occasionally classes or tours that charge a little bit for, but we want it to be a place where people can learn and where people can socialize and where the general public can get an idea of what's out there and who teams are and what's going on in the field.
And the education end of it is
exactly.
very valuable, I think.
And we're lucky we have a venue that is very kind to us when it comes to fees and that kind of thing. And it's also very haunted, so that's always a help.
That's a icing on the cake right there.
And so we can work hard and to keep it down. People come from all over. It costs them a lot of money to get there. We don't want it to be expensive for them
right.
at the venue. And
Yeah.
it's fun.
So
if people
tell
are
us-
happy, I'm happy.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of that whole thing is everybody's having a blast. You know, people are. I think the benefit is in everybody's camp when they're there and they get to network with people, get to talk and learn more. Overall across the board. What can you say though has changed each year? And and maybe even giving a little bit of prelude to this next year.
Okay. I a little uncomfortable saying too much yet about this next year because I've invited a pretty incredible speakers list, I think. I haven't gotten written confirmation from a lot of people who said they're coming.
Yeah.
And so until I have it in writing, I don't like to commit them for sure because it could be something's happening or whatever. One of the big things is the venue has completed their sound system now, so we're going to have outstanding state-of-the-art sound, so it's going to be easier for everybody to hear.
That's going to be great.
Including where the vendor booths and such are.
Yeah.
This is going to be... Because I know, we've had a little portable amp from a guitar, basically, but they've got it fixed now where we can plug the mic right in and
that's going
go to town.
That's going to be outstanding because a lot of us that are running booths are really wanting to be able to listen to our fellow colleagues or new guests that we haven't got to meet and listen, to before, and it gets noisy in there, which is totally fine.
Right.
But because of the way the sound system was before, it was just almost impossible, especially for some of us that sat back closer towards the back of the hall itself.
Right.
So that'll be great.
And I've heard this is fantastic. They designed and had the system put in because it's a place where the city commission meets when they have a special event that's overflow. And so they have to have the video and sound system good enough for television.
Yeah.
So it's all there now.
Okay.
One of the rules I have for speakers is that they can't talk about anything they've talked about anywhere else in the last year. I've got people talking about new subjects. You're going to be there talking. You're one of the people who had actually got everything into me, and I'm thrilled. I think you're probably the first person I asked. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And you're doing so much great new work. I really wanted to get this out. And Michael White, I know he is going to show up too with his new venture in the direction he's going. And I've worked with him a little bit, and I know that you're working on some projects and really outstanding people with a more research end instead of a team end.
Sure.
And we may have a couple celebrities.
Yeah.
I've heard verbals, but, people have busy schedules.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll work out too because that always is a nice draw.
Exactly. And quite a number of other people. Ronnie from the Klondike has sent her paperwork in. So this is a famous haunted restaurant.
Yeah.
I've done classes there. I've given
been there.
lectures there. And
That was an absolute blast, by the way. I loved that class.
oh, good. Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm glad. And they were investigated on paranormal states.
Yep.
And so she's going to talk about that and owning this haunted restaurant and that kind of thing. And we've got quite a few.
Pretty stacked
Really-
group of people.
I'm really impressed.
Good.
And everybody's got new topics for me, they said. So,
Awesome.
yeah. And we're looking at some new ideas for meet and greets. One of the problems we've had is Oregon City doesn't have a really good venue for a meet and greet type thing where you can get food and such and have a lot of people
Yeah.
without renting a banquet room for $1,500 for the night.
Where did we do that last year? What was the name of that place?
It was at Highcliffe.
That was it.
Yeah. And it was kind of a mess. I mean,
Yeah, those poor people didn't expect the number that we had come in there.
and I told them exactly what we were having.
Yeah.
I talked, the banquet person didn't talk to the staff. That's
Okay.
what and we could have had their banquet room, but again, it would have been $1,500 or $1,300 plus the beverages and food.
Oh, wow.
And that's too expensive for people,
Yeah.
So
Well, what we're going to do real quick is we're going to go ahead and take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be back, and we'll kind of roll into some of the classes that you're offering as well. So
Great.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with ASAP Radio. All right, welcome back to ASAP Radio. My name is Ben Robinson, and tonight's guest is William Becker. We left off talking about the Oregon Ghost Conference and how that kind of came about, and some of the changes that have taken place, and what is on the pipe, the agenda for next year. But you also, outside of that, and that's enough in its own, and the Northwest Ghost Tours, you have also other classes that you do, and I've been lucky enough to be able to attend a few at least at this point. They're called Finding Your Psychic Voice.
Right.
Why don't you give us a little bit of background as to why you wanted to start that, and what the class entails, and where it's held, and the frequency and the rates.
Okay. The Finding the Psychic Voice class is my first class that I've offered. It's kind of the basic one. I love it. It's $25 for a 2-hour class, and it's held mostly the third Sunday of the month at Coffee Rush on 9th and Main in Oregon City. Very haunted location. The entities there never fail to, provide for us. And, just 2 days ago, one of the people, not only did the bathroom deadbolt lock when nobody was in it, but this time it even unlocked. Usually they have to break into the bathroom when it locks. So,
oh wow,
yeah. So this is one
Why
of the
doesn't
latest.
that happen when I'm there?
I don't know. You're not there enough.
I guess, yeah.
Anyway, I digress. And I started this because everybody's psychic, in my opinion. Now, again, this is like everything else. If you come across somebody who says they really know it all, run the other way.
Right.
I talk from my experience and my research and what makes sense to me based on all of that. And I try, with all of the work I do in paranormal, not to put in any religious overtones, because that puts a whole set of other definitions.
Sure.
So I
changes dynamics quite a bit.
Exactly. And so not just do I try not to put in Christian, but I try not to put in the pagan ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I offer this class as a way for people to start finding their own psychic abilities. And we start out with the very basics, like how to ground and center, and then shielding and filtering and protection ways, and then opening up and communicating with the beings. And it fluctuates. It varies a lot. Everybody's different. I don't tell people how to do things. I help them find their own way, because everybody's different. Everybody's got a different way of doing everything.
Sure.
And we all have our own instruction manual, and my job is to help you find it and help you figure out how to read it.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. And my job isn't to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And then from that one, I've also developed a more intermediate advanced class. I call it an integration class. And it's for people who already know how to work with the paranormal beings a little bit. They don't have to be expert at it, but they have some experience, and they already know how to ground and center. They already know how to protect themselves and such. And this is then working, and this is where maybe I sound a little crazy, but that's okay. There are a lot of different entities and beings out there, and some of them very much remind me of the beings of folklore.
Okay.
And
can you define that a little bit for our listener?
I have seen with my own two eyes entities that remind me of dwarfs.
Okay.
Kind of like tall gnomes. I've had that happen to me twice. And
wow.
one time it was like they were in a gateway bleeding through from another place. The other time was in Port Gamble, and it was I was standing in an area all by myself. It was at night, and I just heard footsteps behind me, and there was nobody there. I heard them on the gravel, and I had just seen, or just after that, I saw very brightly colored clothes, and this man that was, I don't know, what is that, about 4 foot tall?
3.5, 4. Yeah, about
Something
4 foot.
like
Yeah,
that. Roughly that. And
Okay.
He was there for just a few seconds, and then he was gone. And it was just like looking at you.
oh,
And-
that's fascinating. So I'm gone that quick in your mind?
Absolutely. No, but it was interesting, and I've communicated with enough non-human beings, in a sense, in different locations. I think it's all part of our human existence and what we were originally created to be part of. And we live in a culture, a society, and this isn't a value judgment. There isn't room for that for the most part. So that's been abandoned. But I'm thinking it doesn't hurt to go in and ask permission from these groups to meet with them on our own. And I usually start with people finding their own seat of knowledge first. The Akashic record, or whatever you want to call it, can look different ways for different people. And then going from there with some wisdom and guidance from that place as well. And then how do we incorporate all of these senses into more of our life? We're trained to use our 5 senses.
Right.
Well, the psychic adds at least a 6.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're able to expand into other dimensions or universes that the physicists are talking about nowadays, how can we do more of this and be a more complete human being?
Sure.
And more fully aware, more fully alive of just what's going on around there. And that's my goal with this. That's my goal in my own life.
Yeah.
And it's something I want to help lead other people into. And it's a continuing journey.
Well,
All my
it's
classes,
fascinating.
each class is different because it depends on the dynamics of the people that are there. And I don't follow a set script. You can't. You've got to be
Now-
able to roll with what's happening.
That class you do how often?
It's new, so I'm starting it roughly every 6 weeks, and again at Coffee Rush.
Okay.
They're very kind to let me hold my classes there, and I'd encourage people to help support the business. But they've been very good to me. They don't make me pay them extra or anything, so
Sure.
it's a good situation for everybody, I think. And part of my goal with all of this is it goes back to what I've seen myself as since I was 10 years old. And I had this house that I lived in, kind of in the woods with flowing water nearby, running right by it. And I don't have that location yet. And I was having people come by to listen to me as an older man and learn. And not learn how to do your ABCs, but learn the more esoteric things, the things that I didn't understand when I was 10.
Well, I by no means claim to have your abilities. I agree with you that I think everybody has psychic abilities, but I could say probably without a doubt that you will have that. You will have that location, and you will have that that ability to talk with people and help teach them. I just, with the way you've been going, and you've been building such a good network and fan base following, people that attend your classes. I'm sure it will happen.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that very much. And then I do Haunted Hotspots events, which are special in special locations, and they're longer classes. They vary in length, and the prices and such vary on those too.
I'm sorry, real quick. Was the price the same for your intermediate
Yes.
event? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure of that. So
Yeah.
the Haunted Hotspots, though, you're actually going to a new location?
Yes.
Okay.
And like the last one was at the Tokeland Hotel in Tokeland, Washington.
Which I really wanted to be at.
I know. I really wanted you to be in there.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that's Whisper goes up there. Darren and Jill Thompson, Jill especially, has set this up for me twice now. They've been very kind and very good to me. Really good people.
They are really good people.
And we've done Sumter, B&B, when the Klondike. I've done a couple of times there. Plus, I've spoken there.
Yeah.
I'm actually now a paid lecturer.
Wow.
I'm a professional lecturer now because of that gig.
That is awesome.
Thank you. And Ronnie and her staff and David, they're just amazing people. I like to be able to do anything I can there.
That location was just, I mean, there's a lot going on in that, especially upstairs.
Oh, yeah. And there's an awful lot going on downstairs, too.
Yeah, in the basement.
There was a bartender there at one point. The first time I was there that I picked up on that was part of the Shanghaiing trade, and he had some of those guys down there for a little while before they were shipped out. He was a little bit sadistic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very neat location.
Mm-hmm. And then I've got the Walker Ames house again. I think it's January 11th. And I do still have some room.
Best day on the year, or in the year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's
Somebody
also the reason
famous is having a birthday that day.
I don't know anybody famous, but I am having a birthday, and that's why I always try to...
It's the second best day of the year.
The first being your birthday, right?
Yeah, exactly. December 23rd.
Oh, wow. All right. Yours is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, and anybody wanting to give presents, I'll give you my sizes and my bank account numbers. But it's a wonderful event. I love it up there. And Peter and the staff at Port Gamble are just wonderful people. He's hoping to speak at the conference.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten the written from him yet, so I'm not going to say he's there, but
sure.
In talking about
fingers crossed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people, those, I mean, we do the education piece and then turn it into a little bit of a psychic-based investigation, using a little bit of equipment as a backup, as confirmation, instead of as the main guide. And that's always the biggest challenge, working with people who have a lot of investigation work under them. It's like, no, put that down for right now.
Exactly.
Use this. This is what you're here for.
Right.
Use this as your confirmation.
Yeah, you didn't come
piece.
here to do a science-based, investigation. You came here to, work on that psychic and that third eye.
And use that psychic to lead your EVP session and see what you come up with. And that's what I like to do in investigations anyway. Well,
and even the times I've been to your classes, I think I've been to 2 of your Finding Psychic Voice at Coffee Rush, and then I've also been to the one at...
you were at the Klondike.
Thank you. That was slipping my mind. At the Klondike, and that was the last time I got to go to the Coffee Rush class, Finding Your Psychic Voice. That I really felt like I was finally like tapping in more.
Yeah, you did great.
It was a little freaky in some ways and mind blowing and very, very fascinating, but. That was really a neat experience for me because, yes, I would have something show up here and there and, at your other classes, but I think I was still reserving myself or maybe holding myself back. And it was that class you were like, Ben, stop. You need to literally allow yourself to do this. And so you were working with me exclusively at that moment. And we were both almost playing off each other. I'm seeing that. And you're like, yes, that's exactly. And he's doing this. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? This is crazy. So,
and I love that stuff.
I did too. I thought it was amazing. I just was, cause I guess for me and this for our listeners that are out there that are thinking about attending, your class or a class like that. Yeah, I get it. I get the fact that you worry that what you're getting, into your mind, into your head might be just your brain manufacturing something that's not, at all on a psychic level or what have you. But that's where that it's like anything. You practice it, you keep doing it over and over and keep doing it. And then you start seeing the differences. They're subtle, and then they probably get, and you can, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they probably get a lot more definitive, and the contrast is so different. You're like, no, that's clearly my mind
Right. And now there will always be times when it's a little bit borderline because what we get through isn't always as strong or whatever. But absolutely, it's like anything else. It's practice and study. And the more we do, the more we can get.
Yeah.
And, with you, part of it is you've helped protect the shaman or the wise one or the priest in enough lifetimes, and it's your turn to take on more of that role.
Okay.
So
yeah, and I always find that fascinating, and it was after that class that you and I had chatted about that, and my best friend Katie was there, and we had a really nice talk later on, and that was when you were providing me some of this background. Now, let's talk about that too. This is something you also do. That's not a class that you're offering.
Right.
That you work with people on a private level.
Right.
And provide these readings. So why don't you give us a little bit of background behind that as well?
Okay. And what I do is I've got past and between life readings. Now, these aren't regressions where we do hypnosis. These are readings that I pick up psychically. And I'm talking often to the beings at the time or, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I also do psychic life coaching kind of a thing with that where we can help combine things more. And I've got a regular half-hour rate or hourly rate for those things, and it's usually a private session.
Okay.
And I can do those over the phone. I've had some really good past life readings with people across the country just on Skype or over the phone. So you don't have to be there. It's nicer, but it's not necessary. And a lot of it just developed because as I was developing my own abilities, I was seeing how much of this I can do. Now, this is even harder to prove. I have done them for people who had gone through hypnosis regressions and had been told the same thing or came up with the same thing in hypnosis.
Right.
So that gave me some idea that, yes, I was credible and on the right track. And a lot of times when I'm working with people and we're putting together the lessons for this time from the last time and such, or a lot of times you can see how things fit. Again, it's not always going to be a perfect fit.
Sure.
But it works pretty well.
Okay.
And all of that information on how to set that up with me is on my website. So,
okay. Yeah, and we'll cover that at the end too as well.
Yeah, because I think it's helpful to know what the continuation is of our existence. One of the theories is that we don't send all of our entity here, our being here, in every lifetime. We keep at least a certain spot in that in-between place. And we choose how much we send down, but we keep learning. There's a pathway here.
Yeah.
And,
evolving and trying to, almost advance ourselves, but little by little, I guess, especially through the method of, that experience that's gained from each lifetime added into, I don't know, that in-between area you spoke about earlier. I was kind of curious is there even a name or an idea of what this is?
I don't have a name for it.
Is it a transporting area? Like we're getting from one point to another?
Well, it's an area we're done with existence here. And it's where we go, we rest, we relax, we heal. Our lives down here can be pretty brutal sometimes. And sometimes people need a lot of work done before they can do anything. We can travel and we can visit. Some theories are that we can visit other planets and all kinds of different things. I've got people up there that come and visit me, family members. But I'm not I don't think any of them are incarnated yet. Even my grandmother. It's come off, and I think she's up there. And we work with souls that come up there then too. A lot of people help heal, people help teach, people help do all kinds of things once they're ready. It's all part of our own soul's progression.
Sure. And
a lot of times I'm finding with people is what we're here to do on this planet is often a lot of what we're doing up there too.
Okay. Yeah. So I think what we're going to do, it seems like that blew by really quick, this middle segment. We're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we return, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the segment I usually reserve for the very end called Talking Shit. And at that point, we'll kind of delve into a little bit more, brutal honesty or just, thoughts about whatever. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with ASAP Radio. All right, welcome back to ASAP Radio. We're rolling into the last segment of the show, and tonight's guest, as I mentioned before, is William Becker of Paranormal Insights. Runs classes galore, essentially, and also helps run tours with Northwest Ghost Tours, as well as run the Oregon Ghost Conference every year. So we've gone through, the genesis of your becoming a part of, realizing that there's, supernatural phenomena around us, into the evolution of, your research and your psychic abilities, into the classes and the projects basically you're involved in. Now I want to kind of roll into the talking shit end of things. And I kind of want to know if there are, what your views on Hollywood's depiction of psychics or people who have clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, so on and so forth. What are your feelings about this in general?
Good question. I have tried watching some of the shows out there, and I don't know the people. I've never met any of these people personally. I can't tell you what they're like, that kind of thing. I don't read the living as a general rule, but I can't watch them because it's just too weird. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I'm sorry. I've got the lack of vocabulary. Sometimes it just doesn't seem honest.
Okay.
Sometimes everything's a demon.
Right.
And, well, I've met an awful lot of beings. I have yet to come across anything that's pure evil.
Sure.
I've met some people and non-humans that just weren't very nice.
Right.
But I can usually get along with them okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least they don't beat me up. And I understand the TV shows are there for one reason, to make money. And no matter how honest and genuine the participants are, the editing, the production is all there to boost reader or viewership.
Sure.
They aren't personalities that come across that I like. Put it that way. Now, Michelle Belanger is one exception to that. I really liked her on the shows.
I have always been a big fan of her.
Yeah. She seemed real. She seemed honest. She wasn't making everything a demon, and I really miss her on TV.
Yeah.
Lorraine Warren was, I believe, part of the Paranormal States episode at the Klondike, and my first investigation there was actually when I picked up an awful lot of the things that we've talked about before, was the night before that show aired. And a lot of their historical research and her psychic work fit in with exactly what I was coming up with the day before. Mm-hmm. I think she's got some real abilities.
Yeah.
I'm always leery when people are talking in demons all the time.
Right.
But to me, that's a religious overview.
Sure.
Chip Coffey, I've heard really good things about him. I've never met him. I just don't know.
You're indifferent, yeah.
I have no way of running a test case with or not. He always seems kind of grumpy on the show. But again, all I know him from is Paranormal States. And I used to watch the show. I liked it. The other one that's out there with the detective and such, I like him a lot. When she's not in her thing, she seems pretty nice. But I don't think I make faces like that.
I couldn't tell you. I don't recall.
I don't know. And I'm not trying to put anybody down. I don't know. I just don't have a reference to it. And it makes it seem a little unreal to me.
Right.
And that's the only thing. Basically, we're just regular people.
Yeah.
And
do you think, though, that sometimes Hollywood tries to portray folks like yourself with these abilities, in TV shows or, in movies? Do you think that they're a little bit, shooting over, exaggerating,
yes.
what the reality is of a person with that kind of ability?
Yes, and I think sometimes they make caricatures out of the people, and I think maybe that's what I'm trying to describe on some of these other shows. That's a good point. And you think back to Poltergeist, the first movie or something. The psychic, the medium there was kind of lovable in some ways, but it was a caricature in a lot of ways to me, too.
Yeah.
And I can't remember Amityville. It's been so long since I've watched it, things. And I'm not saying I don't like some of these things, but I do think they set up part of the wrong image. And, psychic have a bad image anyway, so often, because there were, and there still are, a lot of charlatans out there.
Yeah, a lot of frauds.
Yep.
Yeah.
And especially during the first days of building up with spiritualism and such, a lot of people made an awful lot of money by cheating people.
Yeah.
And I don't charge to read houses or to read beings. I charge for past life readings and that kind of stuff. But not for the other pieces. And in part because I could be wrong, but in part because I don't want it to look that way. I don't want it to be tainted or put into the same camp with the people that are, the real frauds.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
Just cleaner to me.
Yeah. So if you could, if you could take, I don't know, a group of, folks that are conducting, investigations using the psychic abilities they have, and sit down with them, have a discussion on, well, let's say ethics, let's say best practices, arrogance, things like that. How would you, how would you, go about doing that? What would you say to them?
That's a really good question. One, keep your ego in check. Nobody's right all the time, and everybody can do this. We're not special. We just happen to have let it come up more than other people have.
Right.
That's the only difference. Ethics, keep confidentiality. Well, I have had entities tell me their stories because they can trust me, and they haven't wanted them spread. Sure. In one case in Port Gamble, a little boy was telling me all kinds of stuff, and I asked him if I could share any of the overview with my team, because there's a responsibility to the team. And he said yes, as long as I did so, if I didn't go into a lot of detail, and I did so after we were off that site, so he didn't have to hear it. And so I honored that. That's
Sure.
what we did.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. When you're working with these beings, you're working with people. Don't ask a question if you don't want to hear the answer either, because
Right.
they're not always very pretty. And don't make a promise you can't keep.
Yeah.
I usually say I'll do my best. I'll try. I'll do what I can. To living as well. I rarely make a promise, because sometimes life happens and you can't fulfill it, no matter how much your intention is to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
if your car breaks down and you're on the way to this appointment with somebody, you're not going to get there. You know, and so I try to leave something in that. Don't try not to bash other people, and we all have a different take on things. And just because one person's picking up one thing at a site and somebody else is picking up something else doesn't mean one of them's wrong, or that either one of them are wrong. It could also mean that neither one of them is right. But we read different layers and we see different things. And a lot of times the entities, it's like different people connect more strongly with other people. It's the same true with paranormal entities. And some of them connect more strongly with some than others. And I have a lot of the people that couldn't be themselves when they were alive that like to talk to me because they feel like it's safe.
Right.
But there are going to be other people that don't want to talk to me so much.
Sure.
And it's fine.
Yeah.
It's where, you know, just where it is. And use the gift as a way of asking questions in EVP sessions and such. But if you're going to start giving the answers, ask the other people around if it's okay. That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they'll be telling me, and then I'll check, and I'll usually leave a space so there's room on the recorder for them to show up as well, and then give mine.
Yeah.
And that can be a way of helping to document. I often have a recorder with me just as a way of documenting what I'm doing because I don't remember it all.
Yeah.
And I don't remember everything I get. So it kind of helps.
Yeah.
Be respectful of the client or the location. Don't trespass.
Yeah.
And I don't call or summons. I don't use Ouija boards. I don't do seances. I'm not going to make a judgment one way or the other. But when you call things, you might get more than you bargained for.
Which is why maybe you have yet to see a demon, right?
Could be.
Maybe because you're actually going about it in the fashion that is keeping you out of off the radar per se with those other entities. So
and I try to be respectful. I invite whoever's around to talk to me or to come and visit, but I don't call them. I don't want to be drug out of the middle of my bed in the middle of the night, So, and to me, using a seance or a Ouija board type thing can be along those lines. And again, I don't want to put that down or say it's wrong or bad.
That's just your experience.
Yeah, there's an awful lot I don't know about those things. So I stay away from them for these reasons. I don't criticize or judge somebody else who's doing them.
Yeah, right.
We may even have somebody.
It's job security, really, in some ways for you because he summons out spirits that need to be, talked to later on. And
exactly.
You're there to do that.
I also don't do cleansings or clearings and such for a lot of ethical reasons, and also I really haven't noticed any that have really worked. I've noticed some where people have said they have and have been patting themselves on the back so much, and as I've watched all the entities just laughing their heads off, and then within about 3 days the activity's worse.
Right.
I'm not going to say there aren't people out there that can't do it, but we still have the whole ethical thing.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just something I stay away from.
Sure.
That's not my job. That's not why I'm here.
Right.
And if people are really interested, I know some people I can refer them to that might have something to do.
Okay.
And leave the drama at home. It's one of the things I really like about the Oregon Ghost Conference. We're pretty good about keeping it drama-free.
Leave the drama for your mama?
Yeah, exactly. Leave the jealousies. People can get jealous and people get envious and people...
Territorial.
And all this garbage. And why? We're adults. We're not spoiled third graders.
Yeah.
And you can get along with people. And even if you don't agree or whatever, get along.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Never trash anybody publicly, especially, or to their peer group, or to their, their, in ways that's going to come back to damage them.
Right. Maybe someday I'll take that advice.
Well, sometimes you have to warn something about something, I guess. But
Right.
No.
Well, I guess would that be essentially what you would, tell them then?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think so. Kind of the do unto others includes into the paranormal beings. And they're not freaks. They're not there to perform tricks.
Yeah.
They're there to communicate. I like to investigate because I like to meet the entities and have a conversation
Right.
and get to know them. And a lot of times they say when you're talking to them and asking them to make meters move and stuff, we're not circus animals.
Yeah.
I've heard them say that more than once, or something to that effect. And
Right.
they're not.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't about curiosity. If you're looking for a thrill, and if you're looking for just curiosity, don't do it. It's
Right.
rude.
Yeah.
You know, and just make yourself look bad. Don't burn down historic plantation houses.
Oh, jeez. Don't even get me started on that one.
Well, my undergrad degree, my bachelor's, is in history, so that's a double whammy for me. You know.
What a wretched ordeal that is. And again, just another, negative light cast upon, especially folks out there that are really legitimately trying to do this kind of research.
I mean, there are people out there like you that have been studying and working with this for forever and really know your stuff and you do it right. You treat the clients right, you treat the place right, you treat the entities right, and you get idiots that do.
Yeah, that's the thing that's really hurt us. It's like we're taking 2 steps forward and they're taking 3 steps back for us, by doing that kind of thing. So now if people do want to say attend a class or get in touch with you for past life regression, all that kind of stuff, how would they go about getting in contact with you?
My email address is william@paranormalinsights.net. Paranormal Insights, all lowercase, all run together. And it's insights, like it's insightful, not the... INSIGHT. Yeah. And my website is paranormalinsights.net. And there's actually a phone number on there, but the email's a lot better way to get a hold of me. And that comes to my phone, my cell phone. So I get my emails pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It may take me a little while to respond because responding from my cell phone usually has words change when I hit send or whatever sometimes. So I try not to do too much of that just because of the typos. But that's the best way. I'm on Facebook at Para Insights, and I'm on Twitter.
And those are 2 different words.
Yes,
to clarify, it's like a person. It's not a
business page. It's a person page.
Yeah.
And I like that because there's a lot more interaction.
Okay.
And
just wanted to make sure that the listeners knew that
right.
2 different words, Para and Insights, has like a person's first and last name.
Right. And I am on Twitter. I think it's at Paranormal Insights. It might be at Para Insights. I'm not quite sure. I don't respond really very well to direct messages and stuff on Twitter, I'm afraid. I'm just, between the Facebook and everything else, I'm just bad at it, and I really apologize. But it's a place to get an idea about some of the things coming up. And my website information's there, as well as on my Facebook page. You can get to my website.
Yeah.
And my email and all that kind of thing there. And yeah, I'd love to talk to people. And
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say enough about you, William. I'm glad our paths crossed.
So am I.
And our friendship has been deeply rooted, and I feel like there's so many exciting things on the horizon for you and I. You and I are both trying to work on putting a class together.
Yep.
Where we have it blends in the science base.
Exactly.
And the the psychic end of it, so that way we can almost kind of give them a one-stop shop, where they get to do everything.
Exactly. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. So you and I, we now have to look for a new location because the first location doesn't seem to be responsive anymore. So we got to hit the road and try to find a location. But no, I'm just, it's been a pleasure to have you not only as a friend, but as a colleague. And I can't wait for Oregon Ghost Conference, 2014.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I wish you absolutely big success, at the Walker Ames, and I wish I could be there.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think it's very rude of people to have made plans on that day, but that's okay. I will get over it.
The nerve.
I know.
The nerve. And then, I'm sure I will be at more of your classes as well. You're finding your psychic voice classes.
Well, hopefully this coming Sunday, the 15th.
Might be able to do that. Okay. Yeah. So definitely hit me up later on about it to remind me.
Absolutely.
And well, I want to thank you very much for being on this show, and I look forward to having you later on the show as well. And outside of that, is there any closing comments you have?
Just, you're welcome, and thank you very much. This has been great. I've had a wonderful time, and I'm very excited about what you're doing in our friendship as well. And
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again, folks, for tuning in, and stay tuned. Our next podcast should be exciting. I've got quite the lineup of folks that I plan to interview as well, and we'll let you know when that gets closer to taking place. Have a great evening, and thanks for tuning in to ASAP Radio.
It was a nightmare.